This is an essay that I've wanted to write for a very, very long time, but I was never quite sure how. Frisson, or aesthetic chills, is something I've felt for my entire life. From a young age, I remember being so utterly captivated by what I would see in the movies or hear in music that I would react, physically. I remember watching the opening scene of Revenge of the Sith as a little kid and feeling that adrenaline rush into me. My hair stood on end, chills shot down my spine. It was magic. And from then on, whenever I experienced any really powerful art, I would feel it. And I mean really feel it. It's more than goosebumps. It's like getting struck by lightning. I feel like a character in a Studio Ghibli movie when they get all puffy. You know what I mean. And after searching and searching, I found out that this sensation has a name. Frisson. And since I found that out, I've wanted to write about it, to try and uncover why Frisson was a thing and what exactly happens during these moments, these beautiful, wildly personal moments that make me emote in such a physical way. But I felt like I was missing something, some standout example of what Frisson really means to me. So I kept it on the shelf for a long time. And then I played Omori. So, what is Frisson exactly? Well, it's like chills, but more. All Google tells us is that Frisson is a French word meaning a sudden strong feeling of excitement or fear, a thrill. And on that note, please excuse my French, I apologize if I'm butchering this. And while this definition is objectively true, it misses a lot of what separates Frisson from ordinary everyday chills. A study by David Huron and Elizabeth Margulis emphasizes how Frisson is a musically induced effect, meaning that Frisson is essentially chills you get from listening to music. But over the years, as the term has become more and more common among those who experience this strange phenomenon, Frisson has become a looser term used to describe the chills induced by not only music, but any sort of piece of media, whether it be music, art, film, poetry, or prose. And that's why more and more, Frisson is being referred to as aesthetic chills. So Frisson is the chills you get from art, but reducing it to chills misses some of it too. There's no official criteria for who experiences Frisson or who doesn't, but most studies seem to arrive at the conclusion that around half the population experiences Frisson, at least through music. And within that half, there's a myriad of different ways Frisson expresses itself. Scott Bannister's paper on aesthetic chills reports that while some experience Frisson as a pleasurable feeling, others relate it to feelings of fear or rushing adrenaline. Sort of like being on a roller coaster. Physically, Frisson has been reported to manifest as everything from goosebumps to dilated pupils to a chill running down your spine, but the best thing I can liken it to is needing to sneeze after you smell pepper. Only the pepper is a really good movie scene, and the sneeze is Frisson. I realize I might sound kinda crazy, but that's just my experience and the best way I can explain it. Everybody experiences Frisson slightly differently and to varying degrees. But what is it in a piece of art that actually gives us Frisson? It doesn't seem to be random, but rather Frisson-inducing art seems to be tied heavily to aesthetics, both audio and visual, as well as emotional catharsis. And to help us illuminate these principles, we'll be looking at one of my favorite games, the 2020 indie RPG, Omori. And here's the last call for Omori spoilers. If you're watching past this point, I'm gonna go ahead and assume that you've played the game, or you're just a rebel who doesn't care. And we're gonna be talking about possibly the most spoilery moment of the entire game, so I encourage you to play it before watching. Are we all clear? Okay. If you've played through the good ending of Omori, you're probably familiar with arguably the game's most iconic sequence. The final duet. This scene, this experience, takes place during the game's climax. If you have played Omori, I'm sure you remember the context leading up to this moment very well, but in case you haven't, here's a bit of background. Skip to this timestamp if you want to move past the summary. Omori, released on Christmas Day of 2020 after 6 long years of development, is an indie turn-based RPG that follows the journey of a young boy named Sunny, split between two worlds as he uncovers a once-buried truth. Most of the more traditional RPG segments of the game take place in the dream world, where you, playing as Omori, lead around a party of dreamlike versions of your closest friends: Kel, Aubrey, Hiro, and of course, your beloved older sister Mari, who acts as your wholesome, loving, human version of the bonfires from Dark Souls. You and your friends travel throughout the dream world searching for your missing pal Basil, while simultaneously fighting monsters, making friends, and also being just the most adorable, well-written kids I've ever seen in a piece of media ever. But things aren't so simple in the real world. Sunny hasn't left his house in years at the start of the game, while our friend group has been cast to the wind. The reason for this great falling out, we learn, was the suicide of your older sister, Mari. It starts to become clear at this point that the dream world and the persona of Omori is nothing more than fantasy, a coping mechanism created by Sunny to deal with the death of his sister. As the game progresses toward its final chapter, the dream world starts to unravel. Shadowy figures taunt Sunny, urging him to face the truth, and towards the climax of the game, Sunny is plunged into black space, a part of his subconscious filled with his most intrusive thoughts. It's here that we finally uncover the truth we've been avoiding, a truth that hardly anybody was ready for. Mari's death wasn't a suicide. In a tragic turn of events, it's revealed that Sunny was in reality responsible for Mari's death. In a tragic accident before a recital the two were going to perform in, Sunny shoves his sister, who falls down the stairs to her death, and in a state of panic, he creates the persona of Omori to protect himself from his guilt over what happened. This reveal rocked me the first time I saw it. It changes the way you perceive everything in the game, and we aren't even to the good part yet. Unlike in the past, after being confronted with his own mistakes, Sunny doesn't run. Through the encouragement of his friends and a tear-jerking trip down memory lane, he chooses to confront the truth. In the final boss fight of the game, Sunny faces Omori, the embodiment of all his repression and guilt, for one final battle. But despite Sunny's best efforts, Omori does not succumb. As hope seems to die and we're presented with a game over screen, the player, and Sunny, is offered a choice. Continue? Rising up from the depths of despair, Sunny picks up his violin, his last memory of Mari, and begins to play the song that was meant to be performed at the recital on that fateful night. This moment, more than anything else I've seen, is pure catharsis. All the pain and trauma experienced over the last few hours of gameplay is resolved in a sequence that, thanks to its beautiful animation, brilliant score, and pure emotional impact, is one of the most powerful scenes I've ever witnessed. And it delivers itself in all its Frisson-inducing glory through a couple different methods. First, the emotional context. Sunny in this moment is facing all the fear and guilt and takes full responsibility for himself, while finally making peace with the passing of his sister. Sunny is forgiven, perhaps not by others, but most importantly, by himself. The emotional catharsis of this scene no doubt brings about a good amount of its frisson. Through the sheer strength of the game's writing, we practically are Sunny at this point, feeling everything he feels. The last duet is a tribute to the characters we've come to love so much throughout the game, and it's a chance for not only Sunny, but the player too, to say goodbye and get closure. And this is all just as cathartic for us, the players, as it is for Sunny. I mean, look at any video of a streamer playing this game. This moment is a real tearjerker. It's hard to encapsulate it in words. There's so much emotion that's been put into these characters up until now. It feels like you really are their friend. And so saying goodbye to them in this final moment is truly an emotional experience. Second, the animation. This game is beautiful throughout. Omocat's art direction is absolutely gorgeous in its childlike whimsy, and that choice in artistic direction adds a lot to the power of this scene. The last duet is, for the most part, retrospective. It's looking back at the memory of Mari one last time before moving on to the future. And as such, the childlike imagery and art style of the cutscene adds to this nostalgic, bittersweet feeling. Sepia tones, vignettes, added grain, and the actual content of the shots themselves all create the feeling that we're looking through an old picture book, taking one last glance at the good old days before closing the book and facing whatever comes next. For many of us, thinking about childhood or the past in general can be a very emotional thing. Many times, like Sunny, we long to return to those simpler days. And through the direction and art of The Last Duet, Omori plays on this fondness and longing for childhood to deliver some serious frisson when, like in reality, Sunny has to move beyond his idealized past. And arguably the most important part, the music. This scene wouldn't be half as impactful if it weren't for the beautiful score composed by Pedro Silva. The soundtrack to the final duet, aptly titled Duet, hits us over the head with frisson for a number of reasons. First of all, the piece itself has been with the player for a long time by this point. Duet is a more fully orchestrated, expanded version of the music that plays over the game's title screen, again aptly titled Title. Every time you boot up Omori, you're greeted with that familiar motif, so that by the time we hear it in its full glory during the final duet, we're impacted emotionally by that connection. This song has been with us throughout our journey, and it comes back at the most crucial moment to send us off. Within the context of the story, too, does this song hold meaning. Presumably, this is the song that was meant to be performed by Sunny and Mari at their recital before the accident, a fact that only adds to the emotional value of Sunny tying up his loose ends in the final duet. But beyond sheer emotional impact, the actual composition of the song itself adds a lot to its ability to give us frisson. It's been very well established that in most cases, frisson is induced through the subversion of musical expectations. Whether it be harmonic, melodic, or rhythmic, we get frisson from things that defy our preconceived notions of music. Essentially, we get frisson when a song takes turns that we wouldn't normally expect to hear, but are surprisingly powerful nonetheless. And this is very clearly the case with the final duet. Now, if you don't mind, I'd like to get all Adam Neely here for a second. The piece is composed in the key of C, but it utilizes some very distinctive and subversive harmony to really send chills down our spine. The song starts out on what we call the tonic chord, in this case C major. It's sort of like our home base, but immediately after, Silva moves to a chord outside the key, A major. It's a shift that's subtle yet effective. Even if you don't know what's going on musically, you can very clearly hear how distinctive this harmony is. It really scratches an itch, especially since we travel up to it chromatically. It's like slickly sliding into an unexpected, poignant new direction. Silva does this a few more times throughout the song, putting emphasis on chords that wouldn't normally show up in the key of C, and he uses these chords to build a whole lot of tension. Most notably, I think of the chromatic descent he uses here, and the minor 4 chord here. You might recognize the minor 4 from Radiohead's Creep. It's a very tried and true method of creating musical tension, and this constant usage of chords outside of the key gives Duet a very melancholy, dynamic feeling that you wouldn't quite get through using cookie-cutter chord progressions strictly within one key. This isn't a music theory class, but nonetheless I think the musical theory behind this piece, even if we don't realize it, is a big part of the reason why The Last Duet gives us so much frisson. The scene combines its cathartic emotional context with a childlike nostalgic art style, wrapping it up all with a nice bow of musical subversion to create an experience that, to me, epitomizes what frisson is all about. And these three elements, emotional catharsis, art, and music, are in my opinion the three ingredients to a frisson-inducing scene. Just about every scene I can think of that gives me frisson has at least one of them. The music and emotional power of I Dreamed a Dream in Les Mis gives me frisson every time, as do the gorgeously animated sequences in shows like Demon Slayer or many of the Studio Ghibli films. But Omori takes all three of these aspects at their best and blends them into one flawless, frisson-inducing scene for the ages. Maybe The Last Duet doesn't quite hit the spot for you the way it does for me. And that's totally okay. Like we talked about before, Frizon is very much a personal experience. No two people are going to get it from the same things, and that's part of the beauty of it all. I hope that by sharing this scene that perfectly encapsulates Frizon for me, you might be better equipped to go find some scenes that give you Frizon, and better yet, understand why they do. If we're better able to understand what it is in art that makes us tick, what gives us Frizon, we're more likely to have a better experience with it overall, and hopefully, we'll be better able to share these beautiful moments of Frizon with those around us. Frizon is a personal experience, but our excitement for the moments that excite us don't have to be. So go on, get out there, and chase down the moments that make your heart skip a beat, the moments that make you feel electric, and share that energy with everybody you can. Thank you so much for watching another video essay. This one was a lot shorter and a lot lighter, but as I said in the video, it's one I've wanted to make for a really long time. And to be honest, I kind of needed a little break after how huge last month's was. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please leave a comment, leave a like, let me know what are some scenes that give you Frizon. I'd love to know. You can follow us on our social medias at SocraticCinema.com to stay up to date, or if you want to support us in making more of these videos and podcasts, you could consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/SocraticCinema for as little as $1 a month. I always put up videos early there, and I like to give little updates on what we're working on, and it's just a really great place to engage with the community. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, please consider checking it out. Thank you so much for your time, and